Hey guys, SickMotion here with the start of the patch 6.9 notes. Extremely long patch for being in the middle of a season with a ridiculous amount of changes in my opinion, and it's going to take a long time to go over regardless of how fast I try and do this. So it's probably going to be done in parts. I'm assuming at least two. We'll see. I mean, by the end of recording, we'll see how much time it takes. I'm gonna skip through a lot of stuff like I usually try to, and just kind of touch on the points that I noticed or stood out to me. It's still gonna take a while, so there's a bit of a new format. I'll say as well where that's you kind of more interactive patch notes here, so you can actually look at the videos for the champions that got kind of reworked or majorly overhaul changed here. I'm just gonna kind of scroll through and look at the things. It's I've been playing on the patch for a while, not a while, I guess a few days, so I can kind of also explain how I've been seeing stuff in games. I haven't seen very many changes from this stuff in game. From the champions perspective, the items, the dragon changes, all those other changes feel a lot different and a lot more impactful. And I think it's just because people aren't playing these champions yet. And in the case of Malzahar, he's getting banned every game, which I agree is kind of annoying and strong to deal with. But I think he's getting overly focused on the bans right now. I think it'll die down, but we'll see. We'll start here. Vlad, they changed some of his base stats and whatnot, and icon changes. They changed the scaling on his passive to be less ability power, or sorry, more ability power from bonus health, and less bonus health per ability power. So subtle changes there. The main changes come from his kit. His Q, lower cooldown at level 1, higher at level 5. The damage is severely lower at higher levels. The AP ratio also lower. The healing is unchanged. The healing ratio is lower. Keeping in mind they also remove Spell Vamp pretty much from the game, other than your Gunblade, which you're not going to be getting on Vlad. But basically, after casting Transfusion twice, he gets a buff when it comes off cooldown. So right when it comes off cooldown, you have that buff. It's very easy to know when an opponent Vlad is going to have their Q off cooldown for that empowered one and kind of play around it. That buff duration lasts for 2.5 seconds. The speed isn't 2.5 seconds, just the time that you have to cast your next Q. It does bonus healing based on your level. 40 to 240 at level 18, plus 1% of your missing health per 40 ability power. It heals you a lot when you're low. So it also does a lot of damage. It does double damage here. I'll finish reading through here. While under the effects of permanent drugs, Vladimir gains a short burst, and the next transfusion within a short period deals double the damage and heals for a portion of his missing health. That's where the brunt of his damage is. And it says after casting Transfusion twice. The important thing here is if you don't get this cast off, you're going to have to cast it twice, and then your next cast will be the empowered one. If you do get the cast off while you're empowered, that'll count as your first cast towards your next empowered one. So if you hit an empowered Q, and that puts you to one cast, and then you hit a Q, and then your next one's going to be empowered, and then if you hit it, it puts it to one cast, and then your next one will be empowered. So as long as you're able to keep chaining off and hitting the empowered Q on anything, just able to use the Q during that duration, you're going to get an empowered Q every second Q pretty much, rather than having a cast 2 empowered, cast 2 empowered. His pool bonus health damage ratio is down a little bit. I think you're going to be wanting to build, from my experience on Vlad, it's hard to say. Building more AP focused Vlad doesn't feel as strong. And building more healthy tanky Vlad, not as much damage, but a lot harder to take down and a lot more annoying. But we'll see. Like I said, I haven't seen many of these champions being used in games all that often yet. His E is no longer just a thing that you stack up to 4 and then you just press it all the time and it hits everything in range. It still costs health to use, and it'll cost 2.5 to 10% of your maximum health based on charge duration. You charge it, basically. You hold down E, and it's a channel while you're holding down the E. When you let go of the E, it's going to shoot the damage off, and that's what it is with smart cast. I'm not sure if it's any or quick cast or whatever it's called now. I'm not sure if it's any different, just normal casting. I didn't try the controls for it, but basically, the cooldown goes down per level. The range stays the same. The damage goes up based on your charge duration. The base damage goes from, it doubles over the charge duration, but you'll be using 2.5 to 10% of your max health based on the charge duration. Um, the ratio is 1 damage per 40 max health plus 0.35 ability power, and then that goes to 1 damage per 10 max health plus 0.7 ability power. So our ability power ratio doubles, and your bonus max health ratio quadruples. So this is where the health kind of comes into play. It hurts you to use it, and then you use your empowered Qs to heal yourself back, so you can kind of keep using it. And also, you're going to have healing from your ult now, which you didn't have before. Um, while you're at full charge, you're slowed while using it, so you kind of have to get in range before you use it. I mean, you can get the Q movement speed bonus right when you get it, or there's some other things you can do, like never auto attacking on Vlad and then just holding on to like a dead man's, and then you'll have that bonus movement speed the entire time. Could be pretty strong with this strategy if you're going for more tanky, but we'll have to see what people do. Another thing is this doesn't do damage to everything in range. It shoots out like skill shots in every direction basically, and if it hits something, it doesn't hit stuff directly behind it. If you kind of think of like Ash's volley, it's kind of like that in a circle around you. So a lot of people were kind of confused. You can actually hide behind minions to avoid damage from this, unlike his old E that would just kind of decimate everything. His ult now also shorter duration on what the time it lasts on the person. The damage amplification from all sources is down to 10% from 12. And upon detonation, it heals Vlad for each enemy hit, and it'll heal for a base amount depending on the level of your ultimate, plus a 0.35 ability power ratio per target hit. So you can get really low, and then right when your ult goes off, you can go into your pool and then get the healing from your ult, and then come out of your pool and have a charged up Q and get that off, and then it becomes increasingly hard to kill a Vlad that actually knows what he's doing when he gets low on health. But overall, from my experience, it feels kind of like he's doing less damage, but kind of feels like he can play on the front line more often and kind of stay in the front line more often. I don't know. Like I said, it's hard to say right now. Not very many people playing him that much. I played him a little bit on the PBE just to kind of get a feel for him, but it's kind of hard to tell from there. Malzahar, haven't really seen any Malzahar played. Maybe 1 or 2 games of Malzahar. I'll kind of go over this quickly. This one didn't really interest me as much. I'll start with his ultimate. His ultimate now, his null zone that used to be on his W is now part of his ultimate, and it drops that null zone for 5 seconds when you start ulting a target on that target. The ult damage is no longer just damage. It's a maximum health per second to all targets in the null zone. So you're CCing your main target, but the damage is actually coming from the null zone you drop, so your ult technically can damage other people if other people are standing in it. The ability power ratio is now 1.5 of the target's maximum health per 100 ability power per second. So if the longer you get to channel it off, the more damage it's doing. Because you do channel it for 2.5 seconds. There's no initial cast time. It just instantly starts casting, and it does 10% at level 3. It goes up, obviously, you can see there. Does 10% of the target's max health per second to all targets in the null zone, so that can actually be quite a bit of damage. Plus you have that AP ratio. The Malefic Visions is still kind of the same. Lower AP ratio, lower damage, lower mana cost. The refund on mana on kill is now 2% of your max mana rather than going up per level. And if an afflicted enemy is hit by Call of the Void or Nether Grasp, it's refreshed. So you can hit them with your E. It's doing less damage, but then you can start ulting them right when your E is about to end, and your E will refresh. So that's kind of cool that you can get that going for you. You don't have to time everything to explode all at once. You can just keep refreshing that and recycling that damage. His W, which used to be the null zone, is now called Void Swarm. It costs 60 mana. It summons a Voidling. When the Voidling attacks a champion, large monster or epic monster, so jungle camps, basically, or assists in killing a unit, so a minion, Malzahar spawns a new Voidling with the same remaining duration. When 3 or more Voidlings are active, they gain 50% attack speed. So one Voidling attacks a champion, spawns another. The new one that spawned attacks the champion, and it spawns another, and so on like that. But the Voidling duration is at 12 seconds, and every time one spawns, it spawns with the duration that the one before it had, so it's just kind of ticking out. Like you spawn one, it hits the person, say, at 10 seconds. Now a new one spawns, they both have a 10-second duration. That one hits something at 8 seconds. A new one spawns, it hits something, and then they both, all 3 of them now have 8-second duration. So your Void Swarm all dies at the same time. It has an on-hit damage. It has an ability power ratio and an attack damage ratio. The attack damage ratio goes up if you level it. They deal triple damage to lane minions below 25% health. They deal less damage to monsters, so Jungle Malzahar isn't super broken like it was when it was first released on the PvE. Voidlings won't spawn if the current Voidling has less than 4 seconds duration. So once they get under 4, they stop. The initial ones that are still there will stay for the duration, but they won't spawn any new ones. And Voidlings prefer to attack targets afflicted by Malefic Visions or his ultimate, gaining 100% movement speed when running towards them, but they no longer prefer to attack champions that are basically attacked by Malzahar. That was a lot to say real quick. But this does a ton of damage, but has to be managed properly, because without it, your kit doesn't do that much. It still does a lot. It's just not as much without those. The Q is still the same thing. It costs 60 mana now at all levels. Its cooldown is 6 seconds at all levels. With the mana buff and the cooldown buff, it now does less damage, 70 base damage less at level 5, which is quite a lot less. A lower AP ratio as well. The cast time has increased on it, but the delay after casting it is removed. So you just cast it on the person or cast it where you want it to go, and it'll go there. And it doesn't say in here if it silences still or not. I'm pretty sure it still silences. But like I said, I haven't really seen Malzahar in a game. His passive, which used to be every X amount of spell casts, he spawns a Voidling. His Voidlings are now his W, so he gets a new passive. The passive is called Void Shift. It gives him 90% damage reduction and CC immunity. Kind of like a Malphite shield if you think about it. Once he's been out of combat for a long enough time, it resets itself. Or a Banshees, you've been out of combat or haven't taken damage for a long enough time, it resets itself. That cooldown reset is at 23 seconds at level 1, but if you're level 18 later in the game, it's 6 seconds after taking direct damage. Basically, it's going to make it really hard to jump on and burst down the Malzahar because you can't CC him and he's taking 90% reduced damage. It only lasts for 1 second longer after you get hit. So you get the initial hit or the initial CC. That'll drop off after 1 second, and then you're just normal again. But you just drop out and don't take damage for the duration of the cooldown, depending on what level you're at. And then you get that up again. So this is what everyone's saying is super duper ultra broken. You can play around it. It's going to be frustrating to deal with if, like, this is for, like, Malzahar getting the drop on someone, has his passive up, walks up, combos someone, ults them, and you can't instantly stop him from ulting because he has this going for him. You hit him, you try to CC him. That triggers this to be down in 1 second. After that 1 second's over, his ult's pretty much already done anyway, and someone had a bad time on your team. But I haven't actually seen Malzahar that much. He has new ability icons, textures, and a splash art. But those are the big changes on him. I think he'll feel stronger, and I think he'll feel like he's able to get his stuff off more often, and he'll have kind of like his get out of jail free card. If someone like you can't, like, in a fight, obviously, like Malzahar's super fed. I'm playing Malphite. I can't ult friggin' Malzahar because he has his passive up all the time. I need someone to break his passive for me so I can CC him. And then at level 18, that's only down for 6 seconds. That's a very small window of opportunity. So it gives them something to work with. Cassiopeia, her new passive, she gains movement speed per level, but can't buy boots because she's a snake. Other champions that don't need boots still need boots, but not her because she's a snake. So she makes up for the movement speed that she doesn't have with boots by gaining movement speed per level. And her Q and her E still interact the same way. Kind of. We'll talk about the E first. The E is a 0.9 cooldown at all, regardless if you hit a poison target or not. However, the damage the ability power ratio is 0.1 from 0.55, so huge nerf to that. The base damage has a nerf as well, and the mana cost is higher at lower level, less at higher level. It no longer reduces the cooldown to 0.5 seconds upon hitting a poison target. So if your target was poisoned before, it would reduce the cooldown to 0.5 seconds when your ability hits. So if you were standing basically right on top of them, there's no travel time for your E. It hits them right away and it resets that cooldown faster to 0.5. In that case, it was faster to spam her E before, but now it's a low cooldown all the time at 0.9, but you don't get that quick reset. It's a 0.9, and if you're standing right on top of them, you hit them, you still have to wait till 0.9 for the next one. So it feels a lot slower for spamming if you were trying to use the travel time on the E. But if you're not using that, or you're just farming with it, you don't have to poison the minion you want to farm anymore to hit them with your E. Because let's see here, no longer refunds additional 1.5% additional of Cassiopeia's max mana, still refunds 100% of the cost. So you can still farm with this, and you can still get the mana back for farming with it. And I think your tier has, I forget what it is now. We'll go through it later in the patch. The tier now gives mana back when you cast a spell. Something like that. So if she gets a tier, it'll still give you more mana than you use to cast it if you kill someone with it. And here's the thing. If the target is poisoned, Twin Fang deals an additional lot of damage and has a more of an AP ratio. If the target is poisoned, Twin Fang also heals Cassio still, and the heal has a 0.1 ability power ratio. So you don't have to use your passive to get that healing anymore. It just comes with you have to have them poisoned. But it's nice that you're no longer, before, if you were trying to hit a target with your E and you hit a non-poison target, and then you had to wait 5 seconds for your next E, that felt really bad. If the poison drops off on your target while you're casting, or you miss the poison and you still shoot the E anyway, your E will still come off cooldown as quickly as it would have if they're poison. You just don't get all those added benefits. Her W got changed. Now it shoots out kind of like in an arc. Lasts for 5 seconds, does a certain amount of damage per second, has an ability power ratio per second. The slow decays over the duration. There's the range on it, the cloud thing. Anyone standing on it's not able to use dash abilities is what's also changed on it. So it's not just a slow. It's a slow that doesn't let people dash off of the slow. So it makes it so you can kind of catch people a little easier. And her Q, the cooldown on it was reduced. The damage on it was increased later on in the game. The AP ratio was also increased. The cash range, unfortunately, decreased for Cassio players. And the bonus movement speed on hit used to be 20% that stuck with you, and now it's 30 to 50%, but it decays over the duration. So you get more initial burst of speed to cover some ground, but then it drops off rather than staying consistent for just keeping on hitting it. Also, you got to keep in mind with her passive not needing boots, she won't get the spell pen or the cooldown boots if that's what you're looking for. However, that gives her 6 items at the end of the game rather than having 5 items on a mage and then your boots usually, because you don't want to be too slow on a mage, especially someone based on like chasing and kiting and movement like Cassio. But this will allow you to say you had a build that had 5 items and boots, but you couldn't fit a death cap into that build. Now you don't need those boots, you just get a death cap. But you got to keep in mind her old passive kind of gave her a death cap. So it'll be interesting to see how it compares there on those changes. Let's see. Zyra here. Zyra, kind of interesting now. She actually spawns passive plants as her passive. She no longer turns into something that shoots something when she dies. Her new passive is she will spawn seeds that only last 30 seconds. But she'll just spawn them all around her, so she doesn't actually have to spawn a seed to make a plant. She can actually make plants at level 1 now with either of her abilities that would grow plants on these passive seeds. And unlike seed spawned by rampant growth, seed spawned by garden of thorns grant no vision passively or when stepped on. So they're not like OP randomized vision control. How many more champions do we have to go through here? We got Zyra. We'll finish her. Q does the same thing. It spawns plants that shoot stuff. However, the ability power ratio a little bit down, the damage a little bit down, the mana cost down. The planter box size increase now increases in a rectangle instead of a circle, so it's a higher hitbox and grows plants slightly outside of the damaged area, like Grasping Roots does. Her W, the seed lifetime on her W, like actual seeds that you spawn and choose where they spawn, actually lasts for 60 seconds instead of 30 like her new passive ones. This ability no longer grants cooldown reduction like it used to, but it increases your maximum plant health on all your plants, so they live through fights later on in the game. And the R no longer increases the attack speed by 50% of your plants, it just increases the damage of the plants by 50%. So I've seen. She also, sorry, I'll talk about her base stats. She got more movement speed and more health, so she's a little more durable and more usable with her movement speed. Um, I've seen some Zyras. I've seen most of them go support. I've seen some Zyras do very well, and I've seen some Zyras feed out of control. Unfortunately, you can kind of guess which ones were on my team and their team based on my luck lately, but it's hard to say how Zyra's going to play. I haven't actually tried the reworked Zyra. It seems like she's going to be more functional and have the potential for more zone control rather than just like if your seeds are down, you can't set up, then you can't set up. She can do more area damage and have more area control. It seems like she's going to be a lot better at controlling areas. And all the Zyra supports that I've seen, I will mention that they're topping damage meters quite frequently if the game goes long enough, just because of how much AOE damage she's getting off in a fight that the enemy team kind of can't avoid if they're in the fight. All right, let's go to Brand.